When we decided to make our keyboards wireless, we envisioned a seamless experience that would leave no feature out. Do you want Bluetooth with up to 5 devices? Low latency RF? Be able to use the keyboard wired? Switch automatically between those 3 modes? Have it connect seamlessly every single time with no hiccups? Well, that one has been more challenging than we expected. And now we're here to tell you what's happening, why it's happening, and how we're going to fix it. The Defy keyboard works perfectly fine for most people in most scenarios. For example, when we went to PyCon Italy, we put our keyboards to the test and were constantly switching between modes and multiple Bluetooth devices that were quite far away, and our experience was flawless. But we know that some of you might be suffering from these connectivity bugs, which make the experience less satisfying. These bugs mostly fall under 3 categories. Number 1, not really bugs, but confusing UX design. Number 2, hardware malfunctions disguised as bugs. And number 3, the real firmware bugs. Awesome. So I'm here with Luis right now, and he's going to be explaining what's been happening and what we're going to do about it. So Luis, let's start first with the not really bugs, but more of a UX issue disguised as bugs. So the keyboard can be used in Bluetooth mode even when it's wired, and this can allow multiple connections to other devices while it's connected to a desktop.
One of the things that sometimes happens is that the keyboard receives the power from the computer faster than the data. And when this happens, if your keyboard is paired via Bluetooth, the keyboard automatically switches to Bluetooth to receive the data. Usually the user would never notice this because it's so quick, right? But sometimes it fails in this process and the keyboard will start blinking, like if it's on Bluetooth mode and it's waiting to connect, right? It's really easy to leave this mode. You just hit escape and then you're back to the cable mode.
You mean you hit the top left key because some people don't have escape. And it can be also confusing for some users because the toggle here at the back doesn't actually mean you're switching on and off between wireless and wired version.
That toggle switches off the power to the battery or from the battery to the keyboard. So if you've connected your keyboard to the computer, or even let's say with a phone charger and the toggle is off, but your device, your keyboard is paired to the computer via Bluetooth, it can still use Bluetooth.
Yeah. So how are we solving this issue where users aren't sure what connection they're on?
This it's a consequence of a design decision. Our goal was to create this device that has this cable, Bluetooth and RF connections, and that you can have a seamless transition experience, right? That you can hop from one to another without really noticing. This is actually quite difficult. There's no other keyboard in the market that does this, and if you see other devices, usually they have a physical switch that toggles from cable to RF to Bluetooth. This could have been a solution from design, right? But our goal was to create this seamless experience. So right now we cannot do this. We cannot add a physical switch, but what we can do is create a digital switch. So you will be able to configure it via base core.
So you can toggle using your keyboard if you want it to work via RF, Bluetooth, or wire.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice. Okay, let's go to the second issue that we've been experiencing, but it's more of a hardware malfunction rather than a firmware bug. Around 1% of our PCBs have the trace connection a little bit damaged, but I say a little because in the first run of quality control tests, they don't see this malfunction.
PCBs have to be snapped from the manufacturing PCB sheet. What happens is here on the edge, there's a few components and a few traces. Sometimes in a very low percentage, it gets slightly damaged. And the weird thing about this slightly damaged is that it goes through our quality control processes. Even when you use it in the keyboard, it can happen for days or weeks that you have no issues. But sometimes randomly, it starts malfunctioning. And this affects less than 1% of people. And it's quite difficult to detect. But now that we know that this happens, what we've done to fix it is rework the design of the PCB. So we have more space between these traces on the edge of the PCB. So when workers and factory workers snap it, they cannot damage it.
And for those people who have this hardware issue, what we've done is we've replaced their PCBs for the new ones so that they'll never have these connectivity issues anymore. Okay, so now let's talk about the purely firmware issues. Now, for example, on some Windows computers, if you're using wired or RF, you would need to replug the neuron when the computer wakes up from sleep. So do we know why this is happening, and what are we doing to solve it?
This is happening because we have the RF, cable, and Bluetooth mode, right? So what happens is that sometimes the keyboard gets, let's say, confused. And this can be fixed by reworking the communications, making sure that the code base is more robust, and specifically ensuring that the sides of the keyboard and the neuron, both of them are ready, because one of them is sending the data while the other is not ready. So it's like it has to kind of follow it. Hey, I'm ready. Are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. And then it sends the information.
Because right now what's happening is they're saying, hey, I'm ready. And then they're like...
Yeah, kind of.
And then they're like, hey, I'm gonna...
It's more like, here you go. It's like, here you have the info.
That's it. And this guy just like doesn't say anything. Yeah,
because sometimes it kind of glitches. The guy glitches. It's a little bit frozen. Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. So it's more like, hey, I'm ready. Are you?
So basically, they just need to go to a psychologist. So
they need better communication.
They need better communication.
Yeah.
Therapy.
Exactly.
Therapy.
Yeah, sex therapy.
Another firmware issue we have is that when you switch between Bluetooth devices, it doesn't work if you have the super keys on the number row. Why does that happen?
This is a super keys bug. The super keys has been in beta for quite some time. Right now we are reworking the communications before tackling the super keys issues. More specifically, what happens is that when you pair to a new device, the first time, just for security reasons, we have to type a code. And to type that code, you need the numbers. We did this, we added this feature, so you don't accidentally pair to a device, and then you're typing in a device that it's not the one that you wanted to connect to. So if you've already paired to the device, you will have this issue because you will have typed this number already. But if it's the first time, then you won't be able to use those numbers because it's this bug with the super keys exists.
So I guess the super keys aren't very super.
Not in this case.
And for the last firmware issue, it has to do with the flashing of the firmware onto the Defy. And what happens is that for some cases, when people flash the firmware, their layers get deleted.
Actually, the layers don't get deleted. What happens is that they are not reloaded. So how the flashing procedure works is that, first of all, you back up your layers. Actually, base core backs up your layers. Then the left side of the keyboard is flashed. Then the right side of the keyboard is flashed, and then the neuron is flashed, and then the final step is reload the layers that you saved at the beginning, right? And there's where the flashing procedure fails.
The reloading.
The reloading, yeah.
Okay.
And it happens rarely, but it's quite annoying because when it happens, your keyboard lights are off because the layer is the factory settings layer. Ideally, this should never happen, but a solution could be that if it happens, base core detects it, and if it's not able to reload the layers, then a pop-up appears and it tells you, hey, we've realized that your layers are not like the previous file that you had. Hit this button and then the layers will be loaded. So that's a way that we can solve this issue.
It sounds like we're working on it.
Yes.
So I know that the Defy has been out in the market for already like 6 months. Why are we still having all of these issues?
First of all, what we are trying to accomplish is quite difficult. There's no other keyboard in the market that has RF, Bluetooth, and cable connection. And actually the challenging part is not even that one, is making sure that all the transition between these connections is seamless. There's other firmwares like QMK, it's only wired, or ZMK, it's basically Bluetooth. So having the three modes is already difficult. Making sure that they work flawlessly, it's extra difficult. And the truth is, like, we developed the keyboards, we tested them internally, and also we sent them to testers and we tested it. And it looked fine, but until we ship them to thousands of people, sometimes we don't realize the kind of bugs that we are facing. And we need to understand that there's three main operating systems, but there's so many distributions of Linux. And at the same time, every computer is different. The peripherals that they're using, the setups, configuration, everything. So sometimes we cannot find a bug sometimes because we don't have that particular setup and that particular usage. And when customers find them or experience them and they report those bugs, then we need to replicate them. And that process of finding the bug and replicating it takes time, and then we need to fix it. Doing something difficult with a small team as we are, it just takes time.
Yeah.
But the truth is that we are fixing bugs through time, and 6 months ago we had other bugs that we were able to fix, and now we will fix these ones, and we will move on until we have a solid foundation where we can continue developing features and the code is stable.
And to add to that, we also have other projects like the Race 2. And with the Race 2, we also needed our firmware developers to work on that and not just fix the bugs that are already existing on the Defy.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because the firmware developers not only develop features and fix bugs for the customers, but actually develop the firmware for things that happen during manufacturing. So for example, we have test jigs, and these test jigs that are the ones that are checking that the PCBs work properly need to be developed by the firmware team. And because the firmware team is small, we cannot do multiple breaks at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's another challenge of being a startup and being a small team, is that we need to reallocate resources.
So I know that we've been mentioning a lot of these different issues that we've been experiencing, and just to give you guys a quick recap, what are we going to do next?
First, we're going to make the flashing procedure more robust, so the last step of loading the layers is more consistent. Then we have to rework the communications, we have to improve them, so the neuron on the sides are able to communicate properly, and we don't have these weird situations where the keyboard is not transitioning properly from one mode to another, with the ultimate goal of having these seamless communications. And the last one is improving the power efficiency. And this is connected to the seamless communication and improving the code, so the neuron on the sides are able to communicate properly. Because one of the things that's happening is that our chips consume too much power, and that's because they don't have the ability to microsleep. So what should happen is that when you're typing, even if you wait, you're not typing for a second, the chips should sleep, and then as soon as you press the key, they should wake up, and the user should not notice any kind of difference. But right now, this is not possible because of these communication issues. So once we solve these communication issues, it will be so much easier to tackle the battery efficiency issue.
Well, thanks for the explanation, Luis.
You're welcome.
So finally, guys, we have prepared a roadmap of our work in the firmware and software side, and you can access it at dygma.com/roadmap. We're doing this because we want to keep you guys informed on what we're working on at any given time and the issues we'll tackle. And of course, we just want to say thank you for all your patience and understanding. We know that it might sound a bit uncomfortable for us to bring up all of these issues. I know nobody really wants to talk about the issues, but we feel like it's very important that we're open to you guys about what's happening, and that, you know, we want you to also to know that we're working hard on fixing them.
Yeah, and even though it may happen only to a small percentage of the users, we cannot accept this small percentage of failure, and we need to put all our efforts on fixing it.
And it's really in our DNA to be innovative and to create things that have never been done before. And even though we'll experience a lot of hurdles, the road will be bumpy, but rest assured that the final result will be amazing. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye.
Bye.